A loyal employee gets fired by his arrogant, power-hungry boss. Humiliated, broken, and publicly insulted, he thinks his life is over. But destiny flips the table in a way no one saw coming. Over the weekend, he receives a call from a mysterious executive from the boss's biggest rival company. They had secretly been watching him for months, admiring his honesty, ideas, and integrity. The company offers him a leadership position that shocks even him. By Monday morning, he enters a massive boardroom. But not as an employee. He's now the one sitting at the head of the table. And the first file on his desk? A takeover plan for the company that fired him. I still remember the sound of the door closing behind me that Friday evening. It wasn't loud, but it felt like the entire world had slammed shut in my face. My boss, Daniel, didn't even look up from his polished wooden desk as he fired me. His eyes stayed glued to the screen, his fingers tapping casually, as if my entire career, my entire existence, was just a notification he dismissed without reading. He only said one sentence. "We're letting you go. Pack your things." No explanation. No discussion. No humanity. I stood there, stunned, waiting for anything that felt like logic, but he didn't even acknowledge me. For 5 years, I had shown up early, stayed late, fixed the messes he created, and protected his reputation every time he screwed up. And I got fired like a delivery package returned to sender. People in the office pretended not to look at me, but I could feel their silence. I walked past desks where colleagues quickly minimized windows, lowered their heads, or grabbed phones just so they didn't accidentally make eye contact with the guy who got erased. When I reached my car, I didn't cry. Not because I was strong. I simply didn't understand what had even happened. It felt unreal, like my brain rejected the idea that a man I trusted could rip my livelihood away with a single sentence. The drive home wasn't a drive. It was a blur. My hands were on the steering wheel, but my mind was replaying every moment of loyalty I had shown him. I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? Why me? Why today? But there are questions life doesn't answer immediately. At home, I placed the cardboard box on my table. Inside it were things that once meant something: a coffee mug with my team's signatures, a framed certificate of performance, a notebook filled with ideas I never got to share, and a pen Daniel had gifted me 3 years ago for being the backbone of the company. The irony tasted bitter. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. My emotions weren't sadness or anger yet. It was emptiness, a hollow silence that kept expanding inside me. By midnight, that silence broke. And it broke into rage. Not destructive rage, but the kind that wakes something inside a person. The kind that flips a switch. The kind that whispers, "You didn't deserve this. And you know it." Still, I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have hope. Just sleepless hours and the echo of Daniel's cold voice in my head. The next morning, I opened my laptop. Not to apply for a new job. Not to beg or message colleagues. I simply wanted to breathe. To distract myself. To feel like a human again. I played a podcast, scrolled through some articles, anything to stop my thoughts from swallowing me whole. Around noon, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I stared at it for a moment. My first instinct was to ignore it. But something made me pick up. "Hello." A calm, confident voice responded. "Is this Aaron?" My name. Not a generic greeting. Someone who knew exactly who they were calling. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Claire. I'm from Lexton Industries." My heartbeat jumped. Lexton. The direct and biggest rival of my old company. The competitor Daniel hated. The one he spent years trying to beat and failed every time. "I hope I'm not calling it a bad time," she continued. "We've been following your work for a while." I froze. I didn't even know what that meant. "We've been impressed by your ideas," she said. "Your initiatives. The way you solved issues quietly. The way you handled crises without needing credit." My throat tightened. "Wait, someone noticed?" "We'd like to invite you for a discussion," she said. "A leadership-level discussion." Leadership? Me? There was a knock at the door of my mind. Was this real? Was this some prank? Was this karma apologizing for yesterday? I try to keep my voice steady. Leadership level, as in what position? We'll explain everything in person, she said. But we want to meet you this weekend. The sooner, the better. We believe you bring something we need. The call ended with an address and a time. I sat there in silence, staring at the wall again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was electric. Someone had been watching me all along. Someone knew my value even when Daniel pretended I had none. I dressed simply, not wanting to look desperate or unprepared. I arrived at Lexton's headquarters on Sunday morning. The building itself was intimidating in the best way. Clean, modern, powerful. It felt like stepping into the future. Inside, I was greeted like I mattered. Like I wasn't a replaceable number. The receptionist smiled warmly. People passing by nodded politely. There was no tension, no ego, no walls around their eyes. When I entered the meeting room, 3 people stood up to shake my hand. Claire, a tall man named Richard, and another executive named Morgan. They didn't offer small talk. They went straight to the point. "We want to hire you," Richard said. "Not as an employee, as a leader." My pulse quickened. "We have followed your work closely," Morgan added. "We know your ideas were stolen. We know your boss took credit. We know how many fires you put out. You were the strength of that company and they threw you away." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Nobody had ever acknowledged that before. "We need someone like you," Claire continued. "Someone with integrity. Someone who builds. Someone who understands people. Someone who can lead this department with vision." I swallowed. What department? There was a pause. And then she said words that felt unreal. "The Strategic Operations Division. You will run the room. You will lead the decision-making. You will be at the head of the table. Leadership. Authority. Respect. Everything Daniel never let me have." They handed me the contract. I read it once. Twice. 3 times. The numbers were insane. The title was unreal. The trust was overwhelming. By Monday morning, I wasn't driving to the place that fired me. I was walking into a boardroom where executives stood up when I entered. And when I took my seat, it wasn't just any seat. It was the one at the head of the table. The place Daniel never let me touch. And on that table, right in front of me, was a file. A takeover plan. For the same company that threw me out like trash. And my fingerprints would be the ones shaping its fate. The room was silent, the kind of silence that carries weight. Not emptiness, authority. Every person seated around the table waited for me to speak, their eyes focused, their posture straight. For years, I had sat in meetings where my presence was treated like background noise. Now the air itself felt different. It felt like it belonged to me. I placed my hand on the takeover file, the crisp pages cool under my fingers. The logo of my former company stared back at me. The company that fired me without thought. My heartbeat wasn't fast this time. It was steady, controlled, focused. I realized something in that moment. Revenge wasn't even the goal. It was about justice, about balance, about the universe correcting something it had allowed to slip. Claire leaned forward slightly. "Before we begin," she said, "I want you to know something. You don't owe us loyalty. We didn't save you. You earned this yourself. We simply noticed what others were blind to." Her words hit deeper than she intended. For 5 years, I had carried the weight of invisibility. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. Richard tapped the table with his pen. "The floor is yours, Aaron. What do you think?" I opened the file. Numbers. Charts. Data. Weak points. Market vulnerabilities. Internal conflicts. Everything that made my old company fragile. As I studied the documents, I felt something unexpected, clarity. It was as if I had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. Every late night, every crisis I solved, every idea ignored, all of it had shaped me for this seat. I looked up. "They're unstable," I said. "But not because of competition. It's internal." Morgan nodded. "We suspected the same. They lack leadership," I continued. "Not employees. Not talent. Leadership." My voice didn't shake. It didn't even hesitate. And the biggest internal weakness, I paused, letting the room lean in, is Daniel. The executives exchanged glances. I could see agreement in their eyes. He's impulsive, I said. He makes decisions out of ego, not logic. He cuts people who threaten him instead of elevating them. You can't run a company when you're afraid of your own team. Richard smiled. Exactly what we observed. I closed the file gently. They're vulnerable. They won't collapse today. But soon. And when they do, we'll be ready. The confidence in my voice surprised even me. It wasn't arrogance. It was the voice of someone who finally recognized their worth. The meeting continued, but now the conversation flowed naturally. They asked questions. I answered with clarity. They proposed scenarios. I responded with solutions. It felt like breathing. Like every word I spoke belonged here. An hour later, when the meeting wrapped up, everyone stood as I left the room. Respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the way people rise without thinking. Sometimes it's in the quiet acknowledgement that you are someone they trust to lead. Outside the boardroom, Claire walked beside me. You handled that perfectly, she said. You're not just the right person for this. You're the only person. I smiled, something I hadn't genuinely done in days. Thank you for seeing what others ignored. She stopped, turning to look at me. People like you are rare. And when the world tries to bury someone like you, it only proves how deeply they feared your potential. I didn't know what to say. I had spent years shrinking myself just to survive under Daniel. Now someone was telling me I was rare. As I stepped into the elevator, a thought crossed my mind. What was Daniel doing right now? Was he in his office, sipping his favorite dark roast coffee, completely unaware that his biggest headache had just been born on the 12th floor of his rival company? The elevator doors closed and reflected my face back at me. I didn't look broken anymore. I didn't look fired. I looked like someone who had just discovered his own power. When I reached home, I placed the takeover file on my desk. But I didn't open it immediately. Instead, I opened the notebook that I had rescued from my old desk. Inside were ideas I'd written over the years, plans that my previous company never cared about. I flipped through the pages slowly. Each idea felt like a ghost from a past life. But now, each one was a seed for a future. I realized something. I had been a leader long before anyone gave me a title. I just never had a room big enough to show it. Sunday night was the first peaceful night I had slept in a long time. Monday morning arrived with a strange calmness. Not the nervousness of a new job, but the confidence of a rightful place. I put on my suit, simple, clean, nothing grand, but the way I carried myself had changed completely. As I drove through the city, everything looked different. The same streets, the same buildings, the same traffic, but a different life. When I entered the Lexington building, every security guard, receptionist, and employee greeted me with respect. Not because of my title, they didn't even know it yet, but because Lexington treated everyone with dignity. A dignity I had starved for. I reached the boardroom again. The same room, the same table. But today felt heavier. Today wasn't a discussion. Today was direction. Executives entered slowly, greeting me with nods. When I walked to the head of the table, they waited. They didn't sit until I did. The moment I placed my hands on the table, something inside me clicked. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't luck. This was my place now. We dove into strategy, timelines, risk assessments, market positioning. But underneath the professionalism, there was a silent truth. They believed in me, and belief is the strongest foundation any leader can have. Halfway through the meeting, my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. I opened it. It was Daniel. It said, "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a few seconds. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. There was no fear. No anger. Just a calm awareness of how drastically life had changed in 2 days. Before I could even think of replying, Morgan spoke across the table. "Aaron, about the integration timeline, your call." Your call. 2 words that carried a lifetime of weight. I placed the phone face down without replying. Daniel could wait. The world had finally opened a door for me, and I wasn't stepping back into any shadows. I was leading now, and leaders move forward.